Me. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being with us. We hope you had a good lunch break and also took advantage of the networking sessions in platform. We have got a jam-packed conversation with our stellar lineup of speakers and moderators as we continue this afternoon's agenda for MyL3C 2021. Without further ado, let's now proceed with plenary session 2, which is on low carbon cities policy and urban planning with potential and future prospects being the main agenda for discussion. Our moderator for this session is Yang Berusaha, TPR Nurliza Hashim, Chief Executive with Urbanese Malaysia, the Center of Excellence for Sustainable Cities and Community Wellbeing. Joining Yang Berusaha, the panelists will share their views on the potential and future prospects of low carbon cities policy and urban planning in Malaysia. Firstly, we are joined by Yang Berusaha, Dr. Subumari Shanmugam. She is the Undersecretary for Environment and Climate Change with the Ministry of Environment and Water, CASA. We also have Yang Berbahagia, Datuk TPR Muhammad Faisal bin Hamzah, Deputy Director General of Planning with Plan Malaysia. He's joined by Mr. Hamdan Abdul Majid, Managing Director with Think City. And our panel is rounded off by Mr. Boyd D. Joman, Senior Expert with the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, or GCOM. Yang Berusaha, the panel is all yours. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Assalamualaikum. Thank you very much, Tamina, for the introduction. Welcome, everyone, to the second plenary of this very exciting conference. I followed it from the morning, and I think it's a very good, a very fantastic milestone for the country for us to have this Malaysia Low Carbon Cities Master Plan. And it's actually just 10 years ago, we had the Low Carbon Cities Framework. And I'm very nostalgic about it because it was part of it when the Malaysian Institute of Planners were very involved in the preparation of the LCCF. So today we are going to be discussing about this NLCCM. In particular, we'll be talking about policies and the urban planning and what would be that future prospects. And I think with COVID and climate change, the 3 Cs, as the ED mentioned this morning, what would be a better time than now to actually to reflect, to rethink about what would be the future that we want to carve for our nation and our cities. So I won't take much time because we have actually exactly an hour for this exciting discussion. We had a very vibrant session this morning. And I think we similarly want to have another enlightening session this afternoon. So we have two presenters, and they be very speaking on a very high level on the policies with regards to climate change, low carbon, and how we sort of align it into the local blueprints at the state and local level. So I would like to invite our first paper presenter who will be sharing us on the NLCCM itself, which is Yang Berusaha Dr. Sugumari Shanmugam. She's the Under-Secretary of Environment and Climate Change from the Ministry of Environment and Water, CASA. Dr. Sugu, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Puan Noliza Hashim. Salam sejahtera and a very good afternoon, everyone. I would like to share a bit about our low carbon policies and framework, cities framework that has been spearheaded by CASA in collaboration with other ministries, agencies, state government, local authorities, as well as other stakeholders. So my presentation today, the outline, can I go to the next slide? Yeah, so basically I'll talk a bit about urbanization, the low carbon cities itself, the strategic framework for Malaysia, and in terms of the policies as well as the low carbon cities framework and way forward. So as we are aware, the world has experienced dramatic urbanization in recent decades. According to the latest report from the United Nations, the global population in 2018 was 7.6 billion and the urban population was 4.2 billion. By 2050, the global population is expected to reach high to 9.7 billion, with 68% of the population living in urban areas. So the question we ask is, why do people actually move to the city? There are several reasons or factors, and one of it is access to well-paying jobs. As you know, the urban areas have countless employment opportunities, and also for better education facilities, social benefits and services, and also the modernization and changes in the mode of living. People are enticed to actually move to cities where it is much more technology savvy, better infrastructure, other social amenities and all that. So what happens here is, what is the impact of urbanization? So one of the major challenges that we face is in terms of the transport system. More people means an increased number of vehicles, which leads to traffic congestion and also pollution from vehicle, as well as concentrated energy use leads to greater air pollution with significant impact to health, urban heat, social problems, health, and access to resource water. So this rises also to the question on why urban planning is important. As we know, as mentioned also in today's morning session, urbanization will continue to grow. So we need to address this issue. It is important to take care of the demand of people, need for physical spaces and infrastructure in a sustainable manner. The quality of our built environment directly impacts the well-being of people in a community. So there is a need for organized and planned development of cities. It's important to have a balanced distribution of resources through urban planning. The city would have to strategize to develop its economy as well as the living conditions. Also, a very important factor is the quality of life is becoming a major concern of every human being when they move to a city. Everyone wants to live in a clean, healthy, vibrant city. So as the city grows, we know the economic requirements also increases. So the financial measures is one of the most important aspects of urban planning, and if it's not taken into account properly, that will severely impact the economy of the city. So the list goes on. Next. Yeah, in terms of Malaysia's commitments in sustainable development, the concept of low carbon development has been rooted in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which was adopted in the year 1992. It has been generally introduced by using the term low emissions development strategies, which is also known as local development strategies. The effort of the low emission development strategies has been further promoted to and further linked to the Paris Agreement and the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals to serve as a catalyst for enhancing country-level action to meet the ambitions of addressing climate change and reducing GHG emissions. At the national level, you see policies have been developed by the government to ensure that climate resilient development is able to fulfill the national agenda of sustainability. So among them, as listed there, is the National Policy on Environment, the National Green Technology Policy, climate change, and so on. So these policies that is mentioned are aligned to the SDGs, namely in this case would be the SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, SDG 13, Climate Action, and as well as SDG 17, Partnership Goals. So it is important to note that the low carbon cities framework that was developed had taken into account the existing policies, such as the Green Technology Policy, Climate Change Policy, and Green Technology Master Plan. And this has actually led to the development of the Low Carbon Cities Master Plan 2021, which was launched today. And what is important here is that the plans that are linked to the local authorities, such as the Low Carbon City Planning Guidelines and the Low Carbon City Action Plan that are being developed, are actually supported by this National Low Carbon City Master Plan. So as we know, cities are the main engines for dynamic economic growth and focal points of population. However, the process of urbanization contributes significantly to the increase of GHG emission, thus fostering urban development in the most sustainable manner can reduce energy demand, consumption, and GHG emission. So therefore, in the master plan, for the master plan, the low carbon city has been defined as a city that implements low carbon strategies to meet its environmental, social, and economic needs, and the city manages and mitigates its carbon emission to reduce its contribution to climate change. And taking into account that actually there is no particular definition of low carbon cities, this definition has been localized to suit the national circumstances, and this would be our future reference for Malaysia. So let me go to the low carbon city framework. What is it all about? So in line with the National Green Technology Policy, CASA, and together with Nation Green Technology Center, Climate Change Center, developed and launched the Low Carbon Cities Framework in 2011 to guide cities and townships towards sustainable development to reduce carbon emission. And the objective is to encourage and promote the concept of low carbon cities and townships, increase the compatibility of cities or townships with their local natural system, as well as to guide cities in making choice or decisions toward greener solution. So this document can be used by stakeholders in cities, townships to measure the impact of their development in decisions in terms of carbon emission and abatement. So indirectly, all these great efforts undertaken by the cities will be able to contribute to our nationally determined contribution. So when cities formulate initiatives for low carbon, these are the performance criteria of LCCF, which will serve as a guidance and reference for the local authorities. So under the LCCF, 41 low carbon city performance criteria has been identified. This includes 15 performance criteria and 4 elements for GHG reduction in cities, which are the urban environment, urban infrastructure, urban transportation, and building. It's important to note that local authorities have been actively working with our MGTC under CASA, and so far, as of 2020, 64 local authorities have been trained, and 30 local authorities are actively participating and implementing low carbon initiatives. So recognizing the efforts done by local authorities, CASA had actually launched Low Carbon Cities 2030 Challenge in 2019, which aims to establish by 2030, 200 low carbon zones, 1,000 low carbon partners. So through a 4-step process, which is measure, manage, reduce, and certify, according to the criteria set under the LCCF, it is important to note that these voluntary efforts done by the local authorities have shown some results, and credit should be given to them for their wonderful efforts. So there are 5 main elements in the LCC 2030 Challenge, which is looked into. That is the energy, water, mobility, waste, and greenery. The zones under the local authorities who participate in this challenge will be awarded with provisional certificate and also diamond recognition. So far, as of 2020, 14 low carbon zone and 20 low carbon partners has been awarded the diamond recognition. And I would like to also mention that at the regional level, these efforts of the cities are also recognized under the ASEAN Environmental Sustainable Cities Award. We hope to hear some good news for the efforts of cities soon to be announced by ASEAN this year. But previously, I'm proud to say that Majlis Bandaraya Melaka had won the award in 2014. Perbadanan Putrajaya has also won the award twice in 2011 and 2017, and Dewan Bandaraya Kuching Utara in 2008. Yeah. So the way forward, look at the way forward. So today, as I mentioned, we had launched the National Low Carbon Cities Master Plan. So we are now ready to start rolling out the plan. So the strategic framework of the National Low Carbon City Master Plan not only intends to transform Malaysian cities into low carbon, but also to push low carbon development in Malaysia to the next level. So in shaping the pathway of low carbon development in Malaysia, the recommended action plans to drive the transformation can be summarized as three key drivers: governance and implementation framework, urban planning and community participation; three key enablers: funding and capacity building, data collection and analysis, and built environment and physical infrastructure; and 9 key direction, and among them are streamline, integrate related low carbon policies and regulation, as well as strengthen the institutional framework and implementation mechanism at all levels. And also there are 24 key actions. So with the rollout of the master plan, the best way is to simplify through the 3M approach. The 3M approach is introduced to guide cities to position themselves as major players in climate change mitigation, as well as set an example for the development of emission reduction strategies at the local level. And the 3M approach consists of 3 actions. Measurement. It is essential that the cities measure and establish an inventory of the GHG emission by establishing a baseline and providing periodic monitoring. Management. It's imperative that the cities develop and update strategies action plan to serve as a guide in the implementation of the mitigation measures at local level. Mitigation is being referred to measures and actions taken to reduce GHG emission. So we hope that with this master plan, a concerted effort is needed to ensure the vision of transforming our cities to become low carbon cities will be successful. I would also like to just touch a bit that even prior to the launching of this master plan, 30 cities has completed their low carbon initiatives where they have their own action plan, and we hope to have more cities coming into play. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zul. Yeah, thank you very much, Doctor, for that insights into the NLCCM. Yeah, I think it is actually a much needed master plan, because it's one of the master plan that sort of integrates not only a lot of dimensions, but also in terms of rolling out the master plan itself. So we have a second presenter here, and that's where one of the key driver that has been mentioned in delivering the master plan is actually urban planning and urban policies. And so today we have Yang Berusaha Town Planner Datuk Faizal. He's the Deputy Director General of Plan Malaysia, and he's going to share with us some of his insights on how spatial planning in Malaysia is being carried out and how that sort of integrates with the low carbon policies that we have currently. So Dato, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Nuriza. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My presentation today will cover 3 main topics. Firstly, I will talk about overview on land use and spatial planning in Malaysia. Secondly, I will briefly talk about Plan Malaysia commitments in the development of low carbon cities. And the last part, I will talk about the way forwards for low carbon city in Malaysia. I will briefly explain the role of Plan Malaysia, or previously known as the Federal Department of Town and Country Planning, Malaysia, which Plan Malaysia is a leading department under the Ministry of Housing and Local Government. The primary role of this department is to spearheading spatial and land use planning methods and practices in this country. Malaysia play its role through its function at three tiers of governments, which is the federal level, state and locals or district levels. And of course, the function and duties of Malaysia are set forth in the Town and Country Planning Act 1976 on Act 172. Development in Peninsular Malaysia is implemented in three stages of plannings. At the highest level, the National Strategic Planning is the base on the 5 years plan, NPP and other sectoral policy which agreed or approved by Cabinet. The strategic policies and overall national planning frameworks are prepared to set the direction of development plan at regional, state or local levels. At the state level, development plannings should be based on state structure plan and the sectoral policies developed by the state government, whilst at the local level, plannings is implemented and controlled by development plan, such as district local plans and spatial area prepared by the local authority. Plan Malaysia commitment in the development of the low carbon cities. Malaysia, like most other countries in the world, has adopted and accept the SDGs and NUA initiative. These international commitments are then translated into most national policy. As we all know, Malaysia has also pledged at the international level of United States Framework Convention and Climate Change to reduce carbon emissions by up to 45% by 2030 in COP21 in Paris. To achieve this commitment, various long-term policies, strategies, and planning frameworks are formulated at the national, regional, state level, and local level. For example, the 5 years nature plan, national forestry policy, national policy and environments, national policy on climate change, NPP3, state structure plan, district local plan, low carbon city action plan, and low carbon society blueprint, and many others have addressed the impact of climate change. The preparation of National Physical Plan or NPP is stipulated under subsection 6B of Town and Country Planning Act 1976. NPP is imperative and far-reaching the country's spatial development to ensure the sustainable progress of the country physically, socially, and economically. Various sectoral policies, including those related to economic, social, and environmental aspects, are also incorporated under the strategic direction proposal in NPP3. Among the goals of NPP3 is to create the country that is resilient to climate change through sustainable spatial management. In NPP3, there are specific thrusts that touch on spatial sustainability and climate change resiliency. These thrusts outline relevant strategic direction, such as thrust number 3, sustainable infrastructure and low carbon cities, which suggests the following action: creating cities and low carbon development, realizing the use of sustainable energy sources, developing low carbon mobility, strengthen integrated and sustainable solid waste management. Currently, the NPP3 is now being reviewed in tandem with the review of 5 years development plans. Another important document prepared by Plan Malaysia is the National Urbanization Policy 2 or NUP2. The NUP will guide and coordinate the planning and urban development of the country to be more efficient and systematic because of the rapid increase in the current urban population. NUP2 emphasizes on balancing the social, economic, and physical development within urban areas. With regard to low carbon cities, Principle number 5, the green development in NUP2 highlights several objectives and strategies in relation to urban management. Among those objectives are objective number 5.1, application of green element in urban development. Objective number 5.2, more efficient and sustainable use of energy. And objective 5.6, increase the size and quality of green areas. Displayed on the screen are now various documents that have been prepared by the department throughout our involvement directly and indirectly in contributing to the formation of low carbon city development planning in Malaysia in general. As we can see here, that since the year 2009, the department has been involved in various low carbon city and green development oriented initiatives to date. For the recent events, we are now preparing the draft for local carbon city planning guideline, and inshallah, it will be completed by end of this year. Low carbon city is closely linked to spatial land use planning. Therefore, all sectors involved in planning a city need to acknowledge low carbon strategies based on their respective capacity. On the screen right now is the various planning guidelines prepared by the department related to the low carbon concept and sustainable development. These guidelines are an appropriate tool to assist all relevant stakeholders in cities development, mainly local authorities, in meeting its low carbon cities targets. As an example, the Green Neighborhood Planning Guideline describes measures which are crucial to be implemented in low carbon cities, such as the provision of bicycle path and pedestrian walkway, community gardens, rainwater harvesting system, and waste composting. This planning guideline has been the primary reference to all parties, whether government agencies or the private sector that involved in national development sector, especially in spatial planning. What is our way forward for low carbon city planning in Malaysia? As far as planning is concerned, the process of urbanization had a major impact on climate change. To address the risk of climate change, land use and spatial planning need to take drastic action beyond the conventional approach. Two main strategies in which urban planning need to mainstream is every planning process are through mitigation and adaptation. So better understanding approach in simple language, mitigations approach are proposed strategy that can address or resolve issues to reduce GHG emission, whilst adaptation is a process of adapting to climate change and climate impact through strategy that been identified. These are among the strategies that I mentioned just now for approaches through mitigation and adaptation. There are also strategies that combine between mitigation and adaptation. Those strategies listed can be an approach for mitigation, and at the same time, it is also an approach for climate change adaptations. For examples, an efficient and integrated public transport system with connectivity to all areas in the city that also adapt transit-oriented development will reduce the use of private vehicles and reduce travel distances. This mitigation strategy can lower carbon emission from motor vehicles and urban areas, whilst awareness to respond and prepare for the risk of natural disaster by providing information on disaster-prone area and upgrading buildings and infrastructure in disaster area to be more vulnerable to the impact of disaster is the method of adapting to the impact of climate change. Malaysia is spearheading further developments in the smart city practice, and Malaysia is now actively involved in the Malaysia Smart City Framework. Smart City is a new approach in urban management and development aims to make Malaysia city more sustainable and livable. Technological advancement and information technology applications make the smart city more practical and convenient for the urban population and city managers. In Malaysia, the areas in which smart city can address urban needs can be divided into 7 key pillars based on smart city component. One of the components that closely related to climate change and low carbon development is smart environment. Smart environment specifically emphasize on environment protection, clean environment, sustainable resource management, readiness towards disaster resilient cities, and green lifestyle. As we all know, Malaysia has target commitment toward reducing 45% of GHG emission intensity from energy by 2030. The government hopes to meet this aim by introducing a range of smart city initiatives, including tree inventories and planting program, intelligent solid waste management, air pollution monitoring, control, and the use of solar energy, and encourage low carbon community initiative. As mentioned earlier, our department is finalizing the National Physical Plan 4 or NPP4. This time around, NPP4 will refine the detail and existing policy laid out in the previous NPP3 into strategic direction, strategies, and action to enhance the policy implementations. Policy regarding low carbon urban development will be scrutinized and cover all planning process comprehensively. Interestingly, the department also currently in the process of preparing a draft for low carbon city planning guideline and will be completely before end of this year. I think that's all. I shall end my presentation. Thank you for your kind intentions. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Dato. Thank you very much for giving us an understanding on how, from the national policies and how that's being filtered, and the work that Plan Malaysia has actually done, especially in the, providing all the guidelines that could easily be adopted in a lot of development plans and township planning that we are, which we are very actively developing. So I'd like to move on before we come back to Dato and Dr. Suku later on, because we have two panelists that we have invited here today, and and we are hoping that they will give us a different perspective because of their background. They are not from the government sector. They are the think tanks and the international organizations. So we'd like to invite Mr. Hamdan as well as Mr. Boyd for the second segment of our discussion. So let me introduce you to Mr. Hamdan Majid, who is also a friend of mine, and he's the Executive Director of Think City. So I'd like Mr. Hamdan to, to touch upon, tell us a little bit about Think City. What does Think City do? And in light of the NLCCM, what do you think about the NLCCM in the work that you do? And how do you think your organization, Think City, have a role to play in executing or localizing NLCCM? So Hamdan, can you share with us?
Thank you, Ponoliza, and wonderful being to join this panel. I think it's an important milestone for the country with the launch of this new report and a blueprint for, in fact, it's quite detailed and provides detailed guidelines in terms of how we can act at the local level. Let me just quickly start, as Ponoliza said, that I'll introduce a little bit about Think City. Next slide. We are a social purpose organization principally established to drive impact in Malaysia, and we focus in terms of the agenda about making cities people friendly and resilient by being a catalyst for change in the way cities are planned, curated, developed, and celebrated. So part of the work that we've been doing, aside from rehabilitating existing urban areas, because one of the key things in the agenda about green is about sustainability, where we have over the last decade or more, we have been very focused in terms of rehabilitating existing urban areas. But as we look ahead, we see that while we manage existing urban areas, we need to find ways how we can make our existing urban areas adopt to face the fact that climate change is around us, and how can we ensure that our cities become more livable. Next slide. In the context of how we look at climate change and so on, we can see the slide here. The data shows that in Malaysia, energy consumption has tripled in 30 years. And we also have seen the shift in the transport sector has become the largest consumer of energy in the country. At the same time, if you look at the energy mix, we have moved from gas-based energy generation to coal-based energy generation. In fact, both are fossil fuel. 85% of our energy source today comes from fossil fuel. And if you look at the table there, that indicates to say that the states that are the highest energy users are also the states that are the most urbanized. In the case of Johor, Wilayah Persekutuan, and Penang. Now, while we recognize, I think the earlier presenter highlighted that while we cannot only have mitigation measures, we also need to look at how can we adopt to the all right, we need to face climate change and adopt and face and have interventions that can adopt to climate change. So in this context, one of the key things that Think City has been focused on is actually to work to develop nature as a solution towards how you can use natural processes that seek to address major societal changes of our time effectively. So in this context, we have been working to use nature-based solutions as a way to manage carbon storage and sequestration. This is through the focus in terms of rehabilitating existing mangrove areas or forest reserves. Two is that in terms of indirect impact of nature-based solutions, where we can see if cities adopt nature-based solutions, there is clear evidence that shows that there is passive cooling in that way, then you are able to use less heating and less cooling in the city, and that would indirectly also reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that's the next focus where we are focused on. And third, we see that there is quite a bit of benefit that comes from nature-based solutions, where by reducing what you call temperature and improving human comfort, that we are able to actually ensure that our the key things that we realize is in our urban areas increased dramatically as much as we urbanize and as we build more in our urban areas. One of the key challenges is that now how do we ensure that we can sustain our urban environments and provide the kind of comfort that is required to make urban areas work. Next. We had an opportunity to develop the solution, and we had presented this as part of one of the approach towards how can we actually, Malaysia can face climate change. This was, we are glad to say that, this approach that we have presented won the Global Climate Kick Award from a leading European Union agency on climate change. And we are currently the process of applying for a international grant to prototype and demonstrate the solution at scale. And we are working closely at the local level with the city government of Penang Island, Majlis Bandaraya Pulau Pinang. Next. Now, we see that nature-based climate solutions, and as I highlighted earlier, that these are the targets that we have set to achieve. I think in the earlier one of the presenters highlighted that it's important to measure. So the key and to monitor. So the key as part of the target of the program that we are looking to implement is in terms of reducing temperatures by 1.5 degrees in urban areas and nearly 5 to 7 degrees in shaded areas between 6 to 8 years after completion of the implementation. We're looking to reduce impact on public health, reduce GDP losses due to flooding, reduce vulnerability of asymmetries in communities, and improve community readiness to face climate events that is all around us all the time. Now, what we have identified are all these impacts that we have assessed are aligned to the 3M approach that has been in the new report that has been launched: measurement, management, and mitigation. So this just to highlight to say that the current approach that we're looking at also is in line with what is being advocated at the blueprint level. So however, as we go forward, we know that the main challenges in terms of implementation is going to be the economic impact of the pandemic and its recovery, and the fact that how do you balance between growth and the need to rehabilitate our economic model to become more climate friendly and climate sensitive, and reducing carbon. Now the shift, while we speak about building back better, building back green, there is also a consequence of, as a result of the pandemic, things could become challenges given that resources are much less. Second is that Southeast Asia is highly vulnerable and climate events are more regular now, as we can see in events in terms of flooding, heat, and other forms of events that has taken place. Third, transportation patterns are not easy to change and expensive, and it takes long time to shift. And that's going to be given that for a highly mature country, we saw urbanization rates in Malaysia exceed 75%. The challenge then lies, how can you retrofit? And fourth is, how do you shift the energy mix? And can we be aggressive enough to make the kind of shift that is required at the local level? Now, while at the local level, they do not have control of these elements, there is also quite a bit of opportunities that exist where we can see that, at the local level, there is through partnerships, they are able to access green finance. They're able to work on carbon capture and storage. They're able to actually incentivize and provide, especially with new developments, green infrastructure. using technology to provide the environmental intelligence so that we can use IoT to our advantage and so on. And the second thing is that we need to exploit Malaysia's great potential in terms of its natural capital, and we see that as a kind of pathway for Malaysia. Now, as we look ahead, I think these are going to be some of the challenges that we see that requires to be addressed and be considered. So with that, I end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Uh, Thank you so much for sharing with us what Pink City has been doing. And I think the nature-based solution is something that globally a lot of cities is going also in that direction. And yeah, I think that's something that we could emulate and scale up all across the country. So I'd like to introduce you to our fourth speaker and panelist for this afternoon, Mr. Boyd. Haven't seen you for a while, Boyd. Nice to see you here.
Yep,
And
thank you.
but I hear that you now represent GCOM, and GCOM is actually the global governance of mayors for climate and energy. So please tell us a little bit more on GCOM, and what you have been doing, especially in Malaysia. Do we have mayors or cities in Malaysia that has been part of your GCOM program, and also if you could relate to NLCCM itself and how GCOM could actually assist our cities in rolling out that further. Over to you.
All right, thank you, Nolisa. Nice to see you again, of course, and my fellow panelists. It's great, and thank you for inviting me for this one. I'm happy to and very honored to be part of this. Yes, I used to work with Iskandar Malaysia and IRDA, of course, and this year I started with GCOM. The other part of GCOM now, of course, is GCOM Climate and Energy. So those are the two main things that it's focusing on. Very important, of course, globally, very important in terms of emissions and relating to what we need to do about climate, because climate is a big topic, and Hamdan and my fellow speakers have already mentioned that, and of course this morning as well. It's good that Nino mentioned about GCOM as well. So GCOM really is a global organization. When I say global, it's for the whole planet. It has something like about 10,700 plus city members. And that's huge. And I'd like the viewers to remember that, because it's suddenly very, very big. And it's an opportunity of how Malaysia can tap into those cities, because there are varying levels of, if you like, maturity relating to climate issues, how they address these. And I have to say, Malaysia is not doing too badly, looking at from that side of angle. And of course, what Dr. Sugu and Faisal mentioned earlier, a lot of things have been done by Malaysia, that's for sure, and GCOM can help that in a bigger way. Essentially, GCOM is that kind of global platform for which cities from all over the planet are involved in. In Malaysia, there's something like 8 or 9 members. I think Seberang Perai is the first one. Iskandar Malaysia is second, for which I helped along to get recognition. And of course, in terms of the project itself, GCOM project, it started out as under what's called IUC, International Urban Cooperation, which is funded by the European Union. Now we're talking about the Europe here coming into Asia, but it's also the whole world, obviously. But in terms of Malaysian penetration, if you like, they came in 2018, more or less, during the Malaysia Urban Forum and the World Urban Forum in KL. So that was the time that we got involved into this. Malacca was the lead city at the time, but for some reason, it kind of drifted a little bit slightly. So I got involved, and luckily for us and for Malaysia, we were able to, as Nolisa said, got everyone involved practically, and that's why we had a lot of members. It's always good to know that we, all of us here in this panel, know people that we know. I can see that even the actual list of participants, I can see a very few and quite a number of familiar names, which is great. And it's an opportunity for me to share a bit more about GCOM itself. So when it started in 2018, it really took off in March 2019. And as many of you know, in the list of participants and the audience here, is the fact that Iskandar Malaysia kind of hosted GCOM And at the time, we got something like 40 to 45 cities involved as an introduction, if you like. So this is one of the things that I like to mention, where one of the ways in which GCOM can come in is to help along, to enable. We're not really coming in very heavily in this sense, but to help along the discussion, how we can get involved. And very rightly, of course, now that Malaysia is into LCC implementation, here is an opportunity where we can work together with not only GCOM, but as Ninoy mentioned this morning, ICLEI, C40, Bloomberg, a lot more other cities and organizations that we can tap into. And of course, I think Nurliza's Urbanist group, very prominent, and Think City also very much involved in that. So together we can really do a lot of things in that. Not only to think about what we can do, but actually do things. So that's the other thing that I want to talk about in this time around, because in a sense, GCOM is continuing in the second part of this project, i.e. starting from this year, GCOM is coming into Malaysia and several other Southeast Asian countries, namely Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, also South Asia or India principally, China, Japan, and Korea. So it's a big scope, big kind of connection with that. And that's one of the best way to describe it. There's an opportunity here where Malaysian cities can get involved, become members, which I would urge, because you are, as I said, you are tapped into more than 10,000 cities globally, and you can get in touch with them, get to know them, and how you can work together. By the way, GCOM, when it started in IUC Asia, kind of Buladua. One is GCOM Asia project, which I'm involved in. The other one is called the International Urban and Regional Corporation, for which is another platform from Malaysia to get into. This one is city-to-city collaboration. And in this case, the idea of this LCC master plan works on that basis as well, which means that we can get involved into things like circular economy, for which a colleague of mine called Jacqueline Chang is involved for that part of the project. So my part is very much to bring in more cities to be involved in GCOM, i.e. Malaysian cities. So if you like, increasing the number of 8 or 9 cities and getting more involved in terms of membership. When you become members, you don't just become members and that's it, guys, done. It should be that when you become members, you tap into the mindset, the way things are done in other countries. And in this case, not just Europe, but America, South America, Africa, and other places. So here's an opportunity, a very big opportunity for Malaysia to get involved and to learn from them, but at the same time, for these countries to learn from Malaysia. From my experience in Iskandar, Malaysia, we actually are teaching the other countries in the world how to prepare blueprints, in this case, low carbon society blueprint, for which is also being looked at national level via LCF and via other things that Plan Malaysia is already doing. So these are the context in which I'm coming from. What is important as well is that the continuation of this project is, now that we prepared 4 world CCAPs, Sustainable Energy Climate Action Plans. In this case, the 4 cities involved are Penampang, Tawau, both in Sabah, Muar in Johor, and Hang Tuah Jaya in Melaka. And so we have 4 now that have prepared CCAPs, for which actually can be now elevated under the planning laws of Malaysia to become adopted as land use development plans, if we want to do that. And what I'm advocating is, here is an opportunity that we can do that, because from experience, when I was still working in Iskandar, Malaysia, that action plan, i.e. the blueprint, which has been transformed into an action plan, has been adopted in the comprehensive development plan, for which Nurliza was one of the advocates in the beginning. So here is an opportunity for us to continue this and make it really valid. And I'm sure Faisal and team are already looking into this very much on how we can embed CCAPs or CAPs in other parts of Malaysia into the development plan process. So let's do away with planning for in a sense, planning for population increase. Population increase means transportation, that kind of thing, and concentrate on what we can do and what are the problems relating to cities to begin with. And I think Hamdan's work on Think City very, very valid in this case, because you guys are the one really going deep into what is happening in the cities and how you can come out of that in a very positive way. I like the idea of nature-based solutions because GCOM is also looking at that in a big way. How do cities, and in this case primarily cities, how do cities work in making things happen for those cities, and not only just cities on its own, but how do you connect this city with another city? And in that context, there's a lot that can be done, and GCOM can come in to enable that to happen. One of the remit of GCOM aim is for all those 10,000 plus cities, if they combine that, they can reduce the Earth's GHG emission reduction by 10%. That is, according to them, it's achievable, providing all those cities involved can really get down to doing something about climate. And it can make a big difference to the Paris Agreement reduction and reducing the temperatures of the Earth at the same time. So this is where I'm coming from. How do we get GCOM into the consciousness of people? One way, of course, is really training the local people and local authorities, especially, on what it means to do something great for your own country, on your own planet, and your own neighborhood, as it were. So in terms of cities, what I'm doing in this sense, because I'm Sabahan, by the way, and my city or my town is actually Penampang district. That's why I push for it, and it's actually I'm claiming this that it's the top performer in terms of GCOM, in terms of climate action planning last time around, and the involvement of Prof Ho and team at UTM made that possible. And I have to say, the Malaysian CCAPs are probably the best performance in terms of the last time round. So you want to keep the momentum, because I like the idea of Malaysia leading the way. This is leading not in Malaysia, but globally even, that we can do this and we can work together. And I'm very much hoping that through this project, there is somewhere that all of us can work together. I think it's already there anyway. I think Loriza knows that. And she was in Apu, for example, where I was there, and GCOM itself, of course. So here is, the ingredients are all there. We all just need to make sure that we sit together and plan for Malaysia. And I'm talking about Malaysia in this case is Malaysia in totality, i.e., don't disregard Sabah and Sarawak, because guys, these two states provide a lot of your carbon reduction.
Yes.
So carbon pocket. So it's important to bear in mind. That's how we should work it in my view. I'd like to mention a couple more things that also part of this idea of how we can work together. One is called the Blue Hope Sabah, which is focusing on just one item at the moment, i.e. Plastic neutral. And we're not disregarding that plastic should be got rid of, because it's not possible. There's too many things. However, we can neutralize that in some way. And Sabah is going forward with that, with a lot of help from people like Sir David Attenborough and the UK government, for example, Timor-Leste. And my colleague who's listening to this will know what I'm talking about, because that's so important. The other one, of course, for Borneo itself, I'm talking about Borneo Island, is called the Borneo Forum, where we are looking at how we are going to look after the forest, one. Two, how do we become prosperous by keeping those forests and by not destroying them? And if we talk about in that sense, there's a lot that possibility that we can do. So as a Malaysian nation, that's how we should be looking at in totality. So the people that are here, from the government to the real authority through the Plan Malaysia, i.e., and of course Urbanese, and now Think City and GCOM and others can really work together. And what I'm saying is, let's work together and get things done and show something on the ground. That's the fun thing I want to say, is that under GCOM this time around is to show some results of the last project. So we want to see some tangible outcome. And we, in this sense, I have to say, it's the EU actually wants to see real results on the ground in Malaysia. So that's part of my work on this project. So thank you, Nolisa.
Thank you, Boyd. Thank you so much for letting us in on what GCOM does. And I'm very excited to know that you've got that 10,000 cities which our 154 local governments can actually network with. They can learn from, and I'm glad that we have some Malaysian cities there. But I'm even more excited that it all started in our World Urban Forum. So I think the World Urban Forum was a worthwhile investment for the government to actually host in Malaysia. And yeah, I'm really glad that things are, moving in the correct direction, where we have so many agencies that's taking care of all angles of the whole ecosystem that needs to be put in place. I just want to go back to Dr. Sugo, because Dr. Sugo, the whole National Low Carbon Cities Master Plan is very cross-cutting, and even in the management and implementation, it requires a lot of agencies and ministries to be involved in. I'm just wondering whether has that started actually, that cross-cutting integration between the ministries that has been identified, and has the work to actually infiltrate this to the state level, has that actually started? So I mean, just a quick understanding on where we are in ensuring that governance and implementation, which is the first key driver to make it happen, where are we on that today? Thank you, Dr.
Yeah, thank you. So actually, it's actually much open when we're looking at CF and in terms of master plan. So we can see that at the level on our it be a collaboration had our state and various other stakeholders. So this process has started even prior to that. And what is important is that we also is it echoing? Okay.
Echo, Dr. Sugo.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Slightly better, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah, can you try again, Dr. Sugo? Yeah. Can you hear us? Oh, okay. So okay, maybe we like to check Dr. Sugo's mic first.
Yeah.
Now we can hear you.
Maybe to the second question.
Maybe I'll go.
The second question, when we sort it out.
Yeah, it's okay, Dr. Sugo. Maybe we'll come back to you in a short while. But on a similar note, because Dato, we.
Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, you wanna go first, Dr. Sugo? You wanna go, or do I proceed first and then you come back when the mic is okay? Yeah. So I'm just a little bit mindful of time. Okay, I want to go and ask Dato, because Dato, I know you're in the federal now, but I know you have more days in the state, So I think I want to ask you about your experience at the state government itself, because I think being in Malacca, being in Johor and several other states, how do you see this vertical integration of the policy itself, and how do you ensure that there's coordination between the state and then between the local governments within the state, and what is the role of the state itself? Because we know that everything that national policies that is effective and successful at the local level requires the state government support, especially in Malaysia. So I think this is where we like to have some insights on your own experience of being in the in two states, especially, how do you see that happen, or what are the challenges that you think we should be careful about?
Thank you, Paneliza. I would see that from the angle of put it in this way, when the national policy put the local government as one of our agenda, and we take it as how to translate and integrate this policy into the plan in the local level, especially in the state. So what we do, as I mentioned earlier, we have 3 tiers of planning. We have NPP, and we always transform or translate this all NPP into our state structure plans. All aspect of sectorals regarding to low carbon, I'm very sure that at the state I've ever served, they are very kind of implementing or adopt the policy into the state, because they know that the agenda is a very good agenda, the low carbon agenda. The only thing is that some state, especially when I was in Malacca and Johor, some of the policy regarding to the tree cuttings ataupun what we call it forest reductions, when we want to reduce the forest area to convert to the agriculture and so forth. So they need some kind of initiative from the federal governments, because the state need to keep their forests for the sake of the nation, but at the same time, the state really need the area to develop. This kind of thing makes the state in a very difficult situation, where they need a development. At the same time, they know that they have their responsibility to the nation to keep for the forest for the low carbons agenda. I think we need to solve these issues in the best way.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's our biggest challenge. And this morning, our high-level panelists, they keep on emphasizing about, commitments, doing it together, the importance of the role of not only national but state and local. So I think that dilemma needs to be fixed somehow, lah, Datuk, kan? Because
Yes,
I think on one hand we have all our important policies, and climate change is something that we have committed to address. And I think this kind of conflicts needs to be addressed, lah. Dr. Sugu, you wanna?
Especially the state yang they don't have the resources, not much resources. They really needs to to develop the area, especially to the land. Some state like Malacca, they really need to reclaim their seas, their beach, to get better or bigger space for developments. So at the same time, we say no to the state, do that, to do this, and at the same time, they don't have any financial resources to develop their state.
Yeah, because I think this morning we heard KSU CASA talking about offset. So I think that's something that probably could be the last solution. So if you can't reduce or handle the situation, you could actually offset lah. We'd like to hear from Dr. Sugu. I think her mic is okay now. And Dr. Sugu, if you want to respond.
Yes, hi, you can hear me now?
Yeah,
sorry for the technical glitch. So your question was related to the cross-cutting issues, right? Within various ministries, yeah. So what I would like to say is that even prior to the development of this, prior to the launch of the National Low Carbon City Master Plan, we have already had a lot of engagement at the state level through the LCCF as well as this master plan. So this is not something that the federal can just develop on its own, but it's through collaboration with the state government, the relevant local authorities, as well as other stakeholders. So this implementation of this framework, I would like to also inform that it actually sits under the Malaysian Climate Action Council, MyCAC, which is chaired by our Prime Minister himself. And at the MyCAC forum, there are relevant ministries as well as the state governments are involved through their Menteri Besars and Chief Ministers. So this forum will set the direction and deliberate issues faced in ensuring the successful implementation of this master plan. And at CASA level also, we have this platform that functions to discuss environmental issues which involves the state government, namely the environmental minister, with our minister, as well as the state executive councils responsible for the environment. So there are relevant platforms that we will have engagements in terms of this master plan.
Yeah, Dr. Sugu, what are the chances of NGOs, private sectors, organization like GCOM, Urbanist, Think City to actually be part of that conversation at a ministry level? It's something that sometimes we only get called during workshops. So we're wondering where can that conversation be held?
Yeah, we actually encourage such conversations. We have started in terms of climate change. If you notice, there are several conversations that we have already started. Today also, I think Datin Sunita mentioned about the roundtable conversation that we had on climate change. So this will be ongoing, and we will welcome all these engagements. So you can always contact us if you feel there is a need to work with us. We welcome such engagements. Thank you.
All right. We don't have much time, but we've been given an extra 3 minutes now. So there are about 2 questions from the floor. The first question is talking about the urban sprawl, actually. So Dr. Sugu, Datuk Faizal talk a lot about urbanization. And as we know, one of it is impact of urbanization is urban sprawl. And also one of the impact of growth is private car ownership. So these are the 2 issues that have been asked in the morning session. There was also a discussion. So there's a question about innovative solutions towards that. So I open this to anyone that that have an idea on how can we balance this up, in addressing such kind of intricate situation.
All right, Papa Nolisa, if you don't mind, I don't mind volunteering a response. Number one, I think I want to affirm to say that we have a great plan. But our challenge is always going to be about making sure that we implement with speed and also with great focus to ensure that we can achieve the targets that we have set. In the case of in the issue of what you call urban extension, now this issue of urban extension needs to be really looked at, because I somehow look at the local level. We are becoming a nation that is being led by developers, and development extends to places that they should not be going to. So much so that a lot of even our reserves, forest reserves, are being encroached into, and that needs to be a serious pullback. The reason why I raise this is that if you look at Malaysia, Malaysia is moving into becoming an aging society, so the need for adequate amount of built environment is no longer the great pressure to build into the newer areas is getting less and less. So we need to now shift into the agenda about how can we reuse our existing urban areas. So Tuan Faizal, I think this is also a response to Malacca and others. Economic growth can come from better optimization of existing areas and also using existing what you call industrial sites and so on more efficiently and so on. And I think that requires a kind of focus and so on in terms of how do we do this and so on. On car resources, we continue to struggle quite a bit by virtue of the fact that we have underinvested in public infrastructure. Now, you can't shift mode share unless there's a great effort towards investing in public infrastructure outside of Klang Valley. In Klang Valley now we have investments that's going on, but there needs greater amount of effort if we want to move the needle in other parts of the country. And the third, I think it's that we need our legislations at the local level also to be updated to reflect the new blueprint. And that needs to happen today, so that a lot of efforts on terms of incorporating a lot of the green initiatives can be done. And there must be special incentives for retrofitting, because there's going to be a lot of cost, because you can't keep building your new cities, but rather you put your guidelines only to be implemented in new development. But rather 80-90% of where we live in Malaysia is already built. And it requires us to make our existing brownfield cities, brownfield areas work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Amdan. I think, I mean, I wish we could go on with this discussion, but I've already been asked to, that our time is up. I want to thank all the panelists for such great insights and sharing. I think it's very important that, it's not only about, having a blueprint and a master plan. I think the execution, the localization, it's so important. In Urbanese, we do the Malaysia SDG cities, and we try to ensure that low carbon is fundamental in terms of reporting for the SDGs for cities. So we really hope to have this conversation, Dr. Sugu, with you and the ministry, and so that we can all come forward. There are so many organizations. Today we launch Alam. So I think we're going to have a very vibrant scene outside here to be discussing on climate change agenda. So thank you so much, and I'll be handing this over to the MC back again. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Can you? We're having some connection issues. So if people can just stay online while we connect to the MC. Yeah.
Thank you, Yang Berusaha and panelists. What an illuminating discussion on actionable solutions. Our apologies for the slight technical mishap. Before we take our leave for the next session, may I kindly request all panelists and our moderators to spare us a few minutes for a quick photo session. Kindly please keep your cameras turned on, everyone, for a group photo, and I'll just count you in. 1, 2, 3, all right? All right, panelists and moderator, can we get you to smile for us on 1, 2, 3? Mr. Hamdan as well?
I have a camera on.
Yeah, his camera is on.
All right, we lost him briefly. Let's bring him back.
Yeah.
I have it on my end.
All right, we see you again. Let's on the count of 3 again. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Sugu, Dato.
Thank you, Dr.
Boyd,
Thank you,
Thank you all.
Boyd.
you.
And Ponoliza, thank you very much.
Bye. See you soon.
Right.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ponoliza.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Attendees,